Allowed proposed ordinance based on the March 2013, which limited heights to 45 or more living next to a two-story apartment complex. No way 6 stories. Helen Marino. Would you like me to read? Or was she here? Okay. I and Lynn Anderson worked as a team to gather signatures and get the Heights referendum on the ballot on March 12, 2013. She and I knocked on hundreds of doors and collected the most signatures of any volunteer. We were committed to getting this on the ballot and letting the people decide as to what sort of town they wanted and how high it should be. We are all affected by what this commission pulled to render the outcome void, which is against our legal rights, Florida statutes, and our charter. I strongly object to 65 feet in our downtown and the passage of 2013-34 tonight, and expect this commission to honor the will of the people, something they were elected to do. Okay, I want to just take a look for a second, if I could, City Attorney. Again, you mentioned this last time around, since we're revisiting this conversation. Upon approval of the first reading, this commission voted to move that to the referendum vote, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And after that happened, again, we moved to follow through.
Then was on the election.
Okay. You mentioned about what it is our responsibility, and thank you for your comments on that, but saying it's our job to abide by the rules of the state, correct?
That is correct.
And we've taken an oath to do so, correct?
Yes.
Okay. If anyone present during the public comment requests or during this item's issues want this commission to disregard the law or to act illegally or to misstate any truths, I will break protocol from this process and ask staff or our city attorney to clarify each issue as it comes by each public comment. So instead of waiting till the end to make comments on it, I would like to break protocol and make comments after each issue to make sure that, again, if anybody would like me to, or any members of the city commission, to not obey the law or to act illegally in response to that law, then tell me, give me your legal opinion as to why we should do that or we should not take the advice of the city attorney or the demand by the state of Florida for us to adhere to. And also if there's if there are things that are information that is incorrect, Mr. Waters, if you could clarify those after each one, because I want to make sure that on public record, each statement is correct and each information. There's been a lot of misinformation about these issues, and I want to make sure we didn't do it the last time, and I want to make sure that every issue is addressed so that the correct information, the correct rule, or the correct law is being addressed after each statement. Thank you. So in regards to that, City Attorney, first of all, I just wanted to state for the record that this commission did not pull anything to render the outcome void, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Okay. Mr. Wilson? You here? Madam Mayor and members of the commission, please pass these LDRs. Thank you. Wes Blackman?
Good evening. Wes Blackman, 241 Columbia Drive. I consider myself a veteran and a refugee of the master planning process that has gone on here for 8 years. Around $1.5 million have been spent in getting us to a point tonight when we can finally adopt a set of land development regulations that make sense and are implementing the city's comprehensive plan. Between these two documents, this is how land use is regulated in the state of Florida. Is everybody happy? The answer is no. Everybody isn't happy. There are those people tonight who will complain that the city is not properly recognizing the results of the referendum held in March. That somehow the will of the people will not be recognized and incorporated into this document. The city has a good reason that it is not including that language in that HB 537 made the election null and void, since the charter change ultimately would result in a change to the comprehensive plan and the land development regulations, since that is how we regulate land use. I would like to point out that there was another petition drive headed up by then citizen Christopher McFoy, which sought to repeal 4 ordinances related to the beach and casino land use zoning designation. The petition drive got the required number of signatures. The city refused to put it on the ballot, and the city ended up suing the people associated with the path. I'd like to point out that the beach and casino zoning district that is included in this set of land development regulations tonight is the same one that was the subject of that referendum. No one is asking that be changed or repealed tonight. My message is to understand the trajectory of the city, that not everything in this city has to result in a lawsuit, and that we should agree to disagree sometimes so that the city can become the prosperous place it was designed to be. Thank you.
Joanne Golden, followed by Carolyn Deli.
Again, I just want to make sure that everything's in public record and making sure that we are recording this. My name is Joanne Golden. I own my home at 502 North Palmway, which is within 4 blocks of the area covered by the Charter Amendment Ordinance 2012-30, approved by the majority of Lake Worth voters on March 12, 2013. Lake Worth legally amended the charter, now limits heights to 45 feet between 2nd Avenue North and 1st Avenue South, between F Street and Dixie Highway and the Intercoastal. The LDRs proposed for approval tonight exceed those heights and are in violation of our current charter. The evacuation route and the area proposed for height increases are one and the same and pose a risk to public safety. The proposed height would be out of scale with the roadway and not compatible with the adjacent residential neighborhoods. One-way north and south residential streets, i.e. Palmway, where I live, Lakeside, and O Street would be adversely affected. Added city services involved with increased intensity would greater burden the city's budget. And changes to these heights with a mere majority vote will change the look of Lake Worth without regard to its voters, its taxpayers, and its charter.
Thank you. Mr. Waters? First of all, city attorney, they say that it's a violation, Ms. Golden's saying it's a violation of our current charter. Can you address that?
You know, the current charter that I think she's referring to, which is the election, as I explained earlier, but since we're back on a different item, I'll re-explain it. The legislature has amended this law 3 years in a row, and each time it tightened up, restricted further and further the citizens' right to vote on charter amendments that would impact comprehensive plans. That's exactly what we have here, a charter amendment that's intended to impact the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan has to be consistent with the charter. Can't have an inconsistent document. So the legislature has said that those type of charter amendments are not to go forward, and anyone that was approved after June of 2011 would be null and void. As ours was approved in March of 2013, it is null and void.
Mr. Waters, in reference to the risk of public safety in those areas, could you address, please, Ms. Golden's comments?
Very good question. It would be very hard to make a educated recommendation or comment on the public safety impact of buildings that aren't there yet. There are already buildings on those streets that exceed 65 feet and 6 stories. When new buildings are built, they do go through a site plan review process that includes traffic analysis to determine what kind of traffic impact we place on the streets that already exist, the impact on the infrastructure that is there, electrical, stormwater, sewer, water. And there are negative impacts that will have a deleterious or negative impact on those infrastructure, and there's improvements required. The project requires those improvements to be made by the person investing in the project. From a traffic standpoint, most of the city is exempt from traffic concurrency because it's an existing city. The safety factor when it comes to intersection crossings and the height of the building is actually going to improve, I believe, and I think many traffic engineers would agree, because we are respecting the visibility triangle. Right now, buildings can be built basically at the property line corner. We are requiring them to be built back 10 feet and then graduated more if you decide to go up higher. So our traffic, our street safety sort of section, which is the cross section from one side to the other, should actually improve over time over what's under the current code. Beyond that, I would be just doing conjecture on what might happen.
Okay, also, how can one achieve 65 feet based on the land development regulations?
As it's written currently, there's only two ways. They both require a 50-room hotel. It either is a hotel in and of itself on a lot that's east of Federal Highway between 2nd Avenue North and 1st Avenue South, but it also has to be in the downtown zone district, and all those blocks are not currently zoned and will not be zoned downtown.
So again, so then, when you're saying the area, because the area in question is from 1st Avenue South to 2nd Avenue North, correct?
But that whole area is not zoned downtown.
Okay, downtown is only the Lake and Lucerne areas.
It's between Lake and Lucerne and halfway along the block towards 2nd Avenue and halfway along the block toward 1st Avenue South. I would love to show you, but we have technical difficulties and can't get the infrastructure to work, and I apologize.
So again, in those residential areas that back up to other residential areas would be the 2nd Avenue North area to 1st Avenue
And
North.
we've intentionally in the LDRs built in a transition line system so that it tiers down to those residential areas.
Okay, so the only way 65 feet again could be achieved is in what area?
Well, it's east of Federal Highway,
Mhm.
on the blocks in between Lake and Lucerne, and part of the blocks north of Lucerne and south of Lake. And it's either a hotel 50 rooms, or a project that includes a hotel, maybe other uses, that is 50 rooms.
But it has at least, so it has to have a hotel element of 50 rooms
Right,
in the downtown area.
yes,
And the areas north and south of there are not deemed downtown.
no.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner McBoy?
Thank you. Mr. Waters, is it reasonable to assume that as you add more stories and more rooms and or more habitations of whatever sort they are, that traffic will go up? Or let me ask it differently. Is there any reason to believe that by building more, the traffic will go down?
No.
But hotels are generally populated by tourists who don't necessarily have cars.
That is correct.
They may or may not,
And the total impact is really based on trip generation, which a hotel impact from the traffic generation is actually less intensive than actually a residential function or a commercial banking or office type function. Because you have people coming in and out more often, and more in a longer period of time. You have peaks, like the morning rush hour to work and the morning rush hour at the end of the day. So when they are looking at traffic analysis, you're looking at peak trip generation. Well, a hotel has a generation that kind of is consistent throughout the whole day. It may be the same number of cars as an office or a residential area, but the impact is not as great because the peaks aren't the same.
Maybe.
Well, how would the difference be between the city of the island of Palm Beach or the cities of Lantana with their bridge closures in the last 2 years? They've had to completely use our downtown as its bypass, correct?
I mean, this is public comment.
Traffic.
I'm not quite sure what your point. Yeah, we had a significant amount of more traffic on Lake and Lucerne than we normally would because of bridge closures, both on Southern
Okay.
Boulevard and on Lantana.
Okay. Carolyn Deli, followed by Peter Tim.
Carolyn Daly, 126 North E. 126 North E is right in the area affected by this Commission's decision to accept Lake Worth City Attorney's interpretation of the State of Florida's legislative statute 163.3767 and ignore the will of the people and the results of the city election charter amendment ordinance 2012-30, in which the majority of Lake Worth voters on March 12, 2013 agreed to buildings no higher than 35 feet from A Street to Federal Highway between 2nd Avenue North and 1st Avenue South. 45-foot buildings will bring a much higher density of people to that area that is currently mostly 1- and 2-story buildings. Most residents in this area park on the street, and the added traffic could cause much friction and many problems. For me, higher buildings will also change the quality of life for the worse. Every morning I feed my dogs breakfast and sit on the porch and watch the sun come up behind the trees while they eat. A 4-story building behind my garden will mean I will have to go out onto the porch between 10 and 11 to watch the sun rise from behind a building. I understand we need more tax money in the city to function. I'm not totally anti-development, but there are plenty of empty properties which, if developed to voter-accepted heights and encouraged by permits and codes that are more developer-friendly, as we seem to be doing, will bring the needed money in.
City Attorney, just one question in reference to that. Please, come up, you can come up. In reference to ignoring the will of people, first of all, a vote hasn't been taken yet, correct? And what is the reference to ignore the will of the people? Again, when the comments are made, folks, in reference to ignoring the will of the people, again, we've been given a mandate through the state government that the city attorney explained very clearly. So if you want to say that you would like us to act against the state mandate and act illegally, please tell me how you would like me to do that and what our argument is for that case, okay? And how you want us to proceed with that.
In the, as I said before, I read that court case regarding the will of the people, and the judge agreed, and I agree with the will of the people, except when the legislature restricts that right, and that's what the legislature has done. It's the legislature that's restricted the right to vote on these type of issues.
Mr. Tim?
Okay, Peter Tim, North O Street, and I wonder, were you people elected by the state legislature? Because all I keep hearing is I have to protect the state legislature. We don't give a darn about the people of Lake Worth who voted for us and put us in these nice comfortable chairs. You don't care about us. You only care about the state legislature, and you've got to obey their laws. How about my laws? My laws was when I voted for you and when I voted for the referendum. That was my laws. And I asked you to enforce my laws, but you don't give a darn about me. All you care about is the state legislature.
No, I'm just saying you're yelling at me, so if you could just keep your tone down just a little bit. You can say whatever you like.
I don't need to howl myself, but I am very upset that I found out that all of my rights and privileges as a citizen of the state of Florida have been taken away from me by the state legislature, and I can't even vote on what I want you to do because you don't listen to me. I want you to represent me, not the state legislature. If you, I would be very happy with you, because if you don't, I'm going to kick your butt out of those comfortable chairs up there and put people in there who are going to represent me. Thank you very much.
Let me give two examples that might help illustrate this. In the 1950s, segregation was legal in Palm Beach County in Florida. And
Quiet in the chambers, please.
And there were cities and counties and states that had constitutions like Alabama and Georgia that segregation was legal. The local people voted. They wanted segregation. They wanted discrimination. And Congress in 1964 passed the Civil Rights Act. So we're supposed to say, ignore Congress because we want to discriminate. That's the argument that's being made. Instead of Congress, it's the state legislature. Let's go more recently. Guns. I believe that there should be gun control. I drafted the strictest gun control ordinance in the state in 1987. And the legislature said, no, what? You can't do that. We regulate guns. And most recently, the legislature said guns can be brought into all kinds of places. And a local official that passes an ordinance against that can go to jail. So yeah, the state and the federal government trumps the local government. Whether we like it or not, that's the way our democracy is set up. You have the federal government, you have the state government, and you have the local government. And unfortunately, even though we talk about home rule, and everybody knows I'm a big proponent of home rule, but I'm also a lawyer, and I have to give the commission the advice that the state law trumps the local law, just like the federal law trumps the state law. That's the best two analogies I can think of and explain that frustration, whether it's discrimination or gun rights. We can't legislate in those areas. They can't pass a law that people vote we're going to discriminate because it's against the federal and state law. It's the same concept.
And quite honestly too, I would like everyone to have a certain level of decorum here in this room if we could. I mean, it's getting a little bit out of hand and, you know, no one, may I speak please, this is my honor. No, Mr. Tim, I sat here in this very chair trying to prevent any of this from even happening in the beginning, back months and months prior to any of this, because I personally don't believe, and I think that we should have sat and talked about this and not even let it get to this level of whatever it is. This situation right now, I sat here near tears a year ago, or whenever the heck it was, upset about this, and I don't like to be ridiculed, and I don't like to be made fun of, and it's not a comfortable position, nor do I feel like being here, even go through this situation. I've made all the right decisions, I've done every single thing that I'm supposed to do by law to handle this, and I'm trying to be as realistic, and I understand it's not good, nobody wants to be in this situation, and I didn't want to be in this situation to begin with, and quite honestly, I think it was a political motivation that got this thing even going the way it went, and it should have been settled by planning and zoning, by historic resources preservation, and conversations rather than rushing to make a big agenda or an issue or a wedge issue in this community, like we need another one, that I could give a hoot about, prevented us from doing this. So I'm sitting here and I'm asking for decorum only because it's not fun sitting up here. It's not fun to have to listen to the decisions like this, or to have to be here and be the butt of your jokes, or the bullseye for your arrows of darting eyes. I trust me, it's not fun. But we have to do it. And if we could at least show one another a little bit of respect, I would really appreciate that. Thank you. I'm going to move on. Peggy Fisher. Commissioner McFoy, go ahead.
Mayor, I recognize that you're not in a comfortable position, and I think you can recognize, I think you're quite aware, that there are a lot of people in this room who are not happy with the situation that we're in.
I'm not.
And I agree, there should be decorum. I agree it should not be personal attacks. At the same time, I think we've had very clear messages for a long time that Lake Worth is a very different place from the rest of Florida, from the rest of South Florida. And there are people who came here very much because it was a different place. And those people are sincerely upset. And this commission, your commission, when it came in, one of the first things it did was it took the Planning and Zoning Board and a lot of people who had worked very hard for compromise, but of people who cared about the city a lot, and threw them all out on their butts.
Point of order, please, sir. We did not
So you
do that.
do need to take some responsibility.
We did not do that, sir. Point of order, please. Point of order, we did not do so. If you want to make a comment in regards to that, that's entirely off the table. Okay, if you want to talk about, I mean, again, it's just about having some level of decorum here in it and being respectful to one another and letting everybody talk and say what they have to say, like it or not. That's our job here to do it. It's not to ridicule one another. It's not to make fun of one another. It's not to yell at one another. It's to make your point known and share your opinions on something, okay? That's what we're here to do, not be disrespectful. Commissioner Zerdy?
We are a different community. We're one of the poorest ones in the county. In fact, we're second to the poorest. We are very different because we have tremendous diversity, and we have a lot of people in parts of our city that are suffering, that shouldn't be suffering because of the services we can't provide, because our values have gone down. We are a very different city. We're way different. Why should we be that different from having a city that is healthy and vibrant from other cities that are along a beautiful beach along on our state? You know, this is ridiculous to me, to be fighting over a 1% spot that still can be addressed and talked about in the future, so we can get moving forward. And this has not just been something in the last 1 or 2 years. This has been over 8 years in the making. So let's just get on with it here.
Ms. Fisher?
Peggy Fisher, 508 North A Street. Madam Mayor, I would respectfully ask that the city clerk quote or read your oath that you all are required to take when you were sworn in and what you are required to swear to. Thank you.
Thank you. City Clerk, do you have that? If you would find that, thank you.
Come on, this is abuse.
Right in the chambers, please. Frank Palin, followed by Joan Farrell. Frank Palin?
Mr. Palin left.
Okay. Joan Farrell, followed by Annabeth Carson.
Farrell, 231 South Conway. I wanted to talk about parking and traffic, but I'm starting with, I already voted with the majority on March 12th to limit the height allowance, Charter Amendment 2012-30, and I'm extremely disappointed that it seems as if my vote just doesn't seem to matter. I've lived in Lake Worth for most of 9 years in the Bryant Park neighborhood. It's less than 4 blocks from Lake Avenue. It's very old. I'm not used to talking, you know. And I chose Bryant Park because it was charming and it looked like a low-rise, lovely seaside town. The proposed new heights of 65 feet for hotel construction in my neighborhood would most certainly bring new traffic tie-ups, especially crossing Lake and Lucerne Avenues, currently evidenced by the closing of the Montana Bridge. First Avenue South is already a traffic nightmare with parking on both sides of the street. It's difficult for emerging vehicles, garbage trucks to pass through. Most residents don't have parking garages and park on the streets. Parking has often been a nightmare during festivals in Bryant Park, like the Festival or Gay Pride. I've taken it in my stride when a vehicle would be parked in front of my home all afternoon and evening. When I come home and I have to park a block away. The festivals are good for the city and the economy, but luckily they don't occur all the time. Whereas construction of new buildings like a hotel with a high population, density, more vehicles, each would have need for a parking space, would make the thought of my having to fight for a parking space in front of my house every day, this would make me very angry.